Hi everybody. Do you know that we all think we are good listeners, but we actually only take in between 25 and 50% of everything that we hear? That's what science tells us. Today, I am going to give you 5 steps for being a much better listener. It's not always that important to be a good listener, but there are times when it is very important that you hear what is being said, take it in, and actually have it with you when the conversation is over, and I'm going to help you do that. I will break for just a minute to tell you that these are not dry ice special effects. This is a humidifier because my voice is so scratchy and I have some kind of thing going on, and I am trying to make it so that I don't scratch your ears off through this little discussion. Okay, let's just dive right in. I'm going to list 10 things that people do, and I'm going to wait for you to, I guess I'll let you get out a piece of paper and a pencil first, and then I'd like you to make a mark for every one of these 10 things that you do so you can count and see how many of them you own. All right, go get your pencil and paper. Do-do, do-do, do-do-do, do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do. Okay, if you don't have your pencil yet, just put me on pause and come back when you're done. Here are the 10 things. Do you pretend to pay attention when you're not? Do you try to multitask and do other things while you are listening? Do you get bored with what people are saying? Just bored and stop listening? Do you get distracted by people's mannerisms or their accent and just pay attention to that and not their words? Do you get to thinking about one of the things that somebody said and just keep thinking about that thing and not hear anything else they said? And suddenly you realize they stopped talking and you didn't hear the second half. Do you ever get angry or annoyed by what somebody said, and instead of listening to their explanation for why they said it or what else they're going to say, you start formulating the answer that you want to give them back? So you're all in your own head with your own words? Yeah. Do you ever find yourself distracted? Just distracted. Look at the pretty birds out the window. Listen to all the people walking by. Do you ever find yourself listening to somebody going on and asking, what does this have to do with me? I don't want to listen to this. Doesn't have anything to do with me. Do you ever hear something you don't understand, a word, a whole phrase, or maybe they're talking about some subject matter or something complicated you don't know anything about, and you just check out? Maybe keep one ear half in the conversation until they get back to speaking English. Just leave the rest of it. Do you ever daydream instead of listening? How many of those do you do? I want to say I probably pretty much do all of them. Well, what I'm going to do right now is give you 5 steps for being a much better listener. And I'd really like it if you would take notes on these 5 and then take them to your active listening exercise with your classmate. And you guys can even practice this together if you want before you get started. Or at least have your notes to the side there, so that as you're taking turns, you will remember what it is you're supposed to be doing. Here is the first step. Pay attention directly to the listener. That means put your cell phone away, close your laptop. If you have to have the phone with you, then put it face down on the table so that it's not distracting you. Sit facing the person you're talking to and make eye contact. I often think it's funny I'm making eye contact with the little teeny camera dot at the top of my laptop. Yeah. So that's attention. That's number 1. Number 2 is to clarify anything you're not sure about the understanding. Whether it's a word they use that you've never heard before, whether they just said a sentence that didn't make any sense to you at all, or whether they are talking about something you're not sure about. Just gently break in. It's okay. It's really okay. They want you to understand, or they wouldn't be taking the time to talk to you. gently break in and say, I didn't really understand that word you used, or I'm not familiar with that way of doing something. Can you explain that to me? Because otherwise what you just said doesn't really, I'm not getting it. Whatever it is. If you still don't get it, then say, wait, let me tell you what I think you mean so you can tell me if I got it. And then you just say, so when you say XYZ, you mean na 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 na. And they either say yes, you understood, you're good, or they say no, but at least they know what your mistake is and how to correct you. It's really okay. Here's the third thing. You need to reflect back to them what they said so that they understand that you got the gist of what they're trying to tell you. Sometimes we just paraphrase or summarize what we heard. This is something like saying, well, so what you're saying is by the time everybody left the office, they'd lumped 3 new projects on top of you and you don't even have time to get the other work done. Pretty much a paraphrase of a long story about people traipsing in and out of the office and asking you to do things, right? But they get it. They get that you got the main point if you just sum it up a little bit for them. All right. The fourth thing that I want you to be able to do is to empathize. Empathizing is where you understand how all this story is, the stuff in the story is actually making the speaker feel. It's about feelings, it's about emotions, it's about where it all left you inside. Sometimes it can be kind of drama filled, and it's actually okay to meet their level of drama. And listen, you don't have to agree with them. You don't have to think that you would have handled it or thought the same thing or handled it the same way. All you want to do as a listener is acknowledge that they're having these feelings. So something like, oh my God, that sounds like that really ruined your day. And you can see I got a little emotional. I'm going to match their emotions. Or, oh my gosh, just telling me about all of that, it sounds exhausting. So I'm trying to show them that I feel for them. I feel with them, even if I don't. That way they feel better understood. But I'm not faking it. I'm not pretending like I took it the same way. I am acknowledging that's how they got it. Okay, that's how they felt it. Last, but far from least, is asking questions. People tell the story, they remember a few things, but there's probably a lot more details. And if you are doing a negotiation, or if you are trying to work through a problem or a conflict that somebody's having, the more information you have about why things happened the way they did, and what the choices were, and what all the situation is, the more information you're going to have to move forward in a constructive way. So asking really good questions that go deep, delve a little bit more. I like to keep a pad of paper and a pen that I can, while they're talking in the first place, jot down questions that I have as they go so that I don't have to interrupt them during their story. And when they get to a natural breaking point, I can just ask them all my questions. All right, so those are the 5 things. Let me reiterate them really quickly for you. 1 is attention, give them your undivided. 2 is clarification, anything at all you're fuzzy about or don't understand. 3 is reflection. Make sure you summarize what they're telling you and give it back to them so that they can tell you right or wrong and then clear it up. 4 is empathy. Meet how they're feeling, share how they're feeling back to them so that they know that you're actually getting how they're feeling. And 5, delve deeper with questions. Okay, I would be remiss if I didn't say a couple of other things. Active listening is not the same kind of listening you do when you are sitting around a table with a beer or a cup of coffee with a group of friends and you're all tossing stories onto the table. Active listening makes you the listener, me the listener, you the listenee, or vice versa. And listening means you do not hijack the story. You do not interrupt with, hey, that happened to me too, and charge off into the sunset telling your own story. Basically, you have just cut the storyteller off and stolen the show for yourself. Don't do that. I know that that happens to you. It doesn't really matter if you're in a group of friends sharing stories back and forth, but it does matter when you need to be heard. Don't do it. And lastly, don't offer advice unless you are asked. And even if you're asked, wait until you've gone through all the other 5 steps of active listening, and then, even then, I might not offer advice. Depends on who you are and what your relationship with that person is. But I like to sometimes just say something, and this is true, like, you've been thinking about this a lot longer than I have. I've only known about this since you started telling me. What are you thinking you might do? What do you think the choices are here? And turn it back to them to go down that road, because advice that people come up with for themselves, solutions, they are much more likely to buy into than anything anybody else tells them. So you can help them come up with their own solution. It's better than if you just feed them answers. All right, if you can do all that, you will be a superb active listener. I challenge you to take your notes to your next conversation with your parents, your siblings, your friend, your partner, your work colleagues, and try it out. Believe me, it's hard. Starting with making eye contact. It is hard to stay in that conversation. And build each of these 5 steps, build on each other, and will make you a far better active listener who will come away with not 25 or 50%, but a whole lot more of the story. And I think the person you're listening to will appreciate you for that. All right. See you on the board.